Every mechanic has a dirty little secret about brake squeal. We have known how to fix it permanently for decades, but most shops in America still do not do it. The method comes from Japan, from the same engineers who build the most reliable cars on the planet. And it is so effective that Toyota, Honda, and Nissan have been using it on the factory floor since the 1990s. Once you understand what they are doing and why it works, you will never tolerate squeaky brakes again. And the craziest part? The fix costs less than $30 and takes about 20 extra minutes during a brake job. Yet 90% of shops skip it entirely. After 22 years of turning wrenches, I have tested every brake squeal fix on the market. Sprays, pastes, cheap pads, expensive pads, you name it. Most of them are temporary band-aids. What I'm about to show you is the actual engineering solution that Japanese manufacturers perfected, the one that eliminates brake squeal at its source. And step number 4, that is the one most people have never even heard of. It changed the way I do every single brake job. Let's get into it. First, you need to understand why your brakes squeal in the first place, because once you understand the physics, the Japanese solution makes perfect sense. Brake squeal is not a sign that something is broken. It is vibration. Specifically, it is high-frequency vibration between 1,000 and 16,000 hertz generated by the interaction between your brake pad, the rotor, and the caliper. When you press the brake pedal, the pad clamps down on the spinning rotor. That friction slows you down. But friction also generates vibration. And if the natural frequency of the pad happens to line up with the natural frequency of the rotor or caliper, you get resonance. The two components start vibrating together, amplifying each other, and that amplified vibration radiates outward as sound. That piercing squeal you hear at the stoplight? Your brake pad is literally acting like a speaker, turning mechanical vibration into airborne noise. It is the same principle as dragging a wet finger around the rim of a wine glass. The finger provides friction, the glass resonates, and suddenly everyone at the table is looking at you. Now here is the thing. American and European brake manufacturers have traditionally tried to solve this problem one way. Throw a better friction material at it. Change the pad compound. Maybe add a squirt of anti-squeal paste on the back. And sometimes that works, temporarily, until the paste dries out, or the new pad glazes over, or the weather changes, and the squeal comes right back. Japanese engineers took a completely different approach. Instead of trying to overpower the vibration, they engineered a system to prevent the vibration from happening in the first place. They attacked the problem from 5 different angles simultaneously. And that layered system-level thinking is what makes the Japanese method so devastatingly effective. Let me walk you through all 5 steps, starting with the one that most people get wrong. Step 1. The multi-layer shim system. If you have ever done a brake job on a Toyota or a Honda and noticed those thin metal plates attached to the back of the brake pads, those are anti-squeal shims. If you threw them away or reused the old crusty ones, you made the biggest mistake of the entire brake job. Japanese manufacturers do not include these shims as a suggestion. They are a precisely engineered component of the braking system. A proper Japanese-style anti-squeal shim is not just a piece of metal. It is a multi-layer sandwich. The shim typically consists of a stainless steel plate bonded to a layer of rubber or viscoelastic polymer, sometimes with a second steel plate on the other side. That rubber layer is the key. When vibration travels from the brake pad toward the caliper piston, it hits that viscoelastic layer and gets absorbed. The energy converts to heat instead of sound. The vibration dies before it can reach the caliper and amplify. This is called constrained layer damping, and it is the exact same principle used in recording studios and submarine hulls. Viscoelastic damping stops the noise at the source. Japanese brake engineers did not stumble onto this by accident. Companies like Akebono, founded in Japan in 1929, and now the largest OEM brake pad supplier in North America, spent decades refining this technology. Their Pro HD line uses application-specific shim designs, tuned to the natural frequency of each vehicle platform. That means the shim on a Camry is different from the shim on a Civic, because those vehicles have different resonant frequencies. That level of engineering outperforms a $5 tube of anti-squeal paste. Here is what you need to do. When you buy brake pads, look for pads that come with integrated multi-layer shims already attached. Akabono Pro ACT pads, Nishinbo OEM pads, and genuine Toyota or Honda OEM pads all include them. If your pads do not come with shims, buy OEM shim kits separately from the dealer. For a Toyota, search for the anti-squeal shim kit using your vehicle part number. They typically run $15 to $25 per axle. That is cheap insurance against a noise that will drive you insane. And here is the critical detail. When you install the shims, apply a thin layer of high-temperature synthetic brake grease to both sides of the shim, between the shim and the pad backing plate, and between the shim and the caliper piston. Not petroleum grease, not white lithium grease. Use high-temperature synthetic brake grease rated to at least 400 degrees Fahrenheit. This grease fills microscopic gaps and further dampens vibration transfer. Toyota Factory Service Manual specifies this step for every single brake job. I have inspected Toyotas with 200,000 miles, where the original brake hardware was still doing its job because the factory applied that grease correctly on day one. 20 cents worth of grease, 20 years of silence. Step 2. The J-chamfer. This one is subtle, but brilliant. If you look at a high-quality Japanese brake pad from the side, you will notice the leading and trailing edges of the friction material are not square. They are cut at an angle. That angled cut is called a chamfer. Not all chamfers are equal. Japanese manufacturers pioneered a specific design called the J-chamfer. A standard chamfer is just a flat angle cut into the edge of the pad. It helps a little with initial noise, but as the pad wears down, the chamfer wears away and the noise comes back. A J-chamfer uses a curved profile that maintains its shape as the pad wears. According to Nishinbo, one of Japan's largest OEM brake friction suppliers, J-chamfers provide 30% more effective noise reduction at 50% pad wear compared to standard chamfers. Think about that. Halfway through the life of the pad, the J-chamfer is still actively suppressing noise, while a standard chamfer has long since worn flat. The science behind this is elegant. When the leading edge of a brake pad hits the spinning rotor, it tends to dig in slightly. That digging action creates a rocking motion in the pad, which the trailing edge then amplifies as it lifts away from the rotor surface. That rocking motion is vibration, and vibration is noise. The chamfer reduces the contact area at those critical leading and trailing edges, which reduces the initial digging force and prevents the rocking motion from starting. The J-shaped profile ensures this effect persists throughout the pad's entire lifespan. If you are buying aftermarket pads, check the edges. If the friction material has sharp square edges with no chamfer at all, you are buying bottom-of-the-barrel pads, and you will pay for it in noise. Premium. Japanese manufactured pads from Akabono, Nishinbo, or OEM suppliers always include properly engineered chamfers. If you already have pads installed and they are squealing, you can carefully file a small chamfer onto the leading and trailing edges yourself. Use a flat file. Take material off at roughly a 45-degree angle and only remove about 1/8 of an inch of depth. It is not a perfect substitute for a factory J-chamfer, but it helps. I have done this in my shop dozens of times on cheap aftermarket pads that customers insisted on using, and it eliminates the squeal in about 70% of cases. Step 3. The correct friction material. Here is where most people go wrong before they even start. They walk into an auto parts store, ask for brake pads for their 2019 Camry, and buy whatever is cheapest on the shelf. Then they wonder why their brakes sound like a freight train. Japanese vehicles are engineered from the factory with ceramic or low metallic NAO, non-asbestos organic, brake pads. These pad compounds are specifically formulated to minimize noise while maintaining stopping power. When you replace them with cheap, semi-metallic pads because they were $18 less, you have just changed the fundamental friction equation of the entire braking system. Semi-metallic pads have more metal content in the friction material. That metal content makes them durable and heat-resistant, which is great, but it also makes them louder. The metal fibers in the pad interact with the cast iron rotor surface and generate higher frequency vibrations that sit right in the sweet spot of human hearing. That is why so many people experience brake squeal after a brake job, even though the old pads were quiet. They unknowingly downgraded from ceramic original equipment manufacturer pads to cheap semi-metallic aftermarket pads. Japanese ceramic pad technology, pioneered by Akebono in the early 2000s, uses a fundamentally different approach. Instead of metal fibers, ceramic compounds use ceramic fibers, non-ferrous filler materials, and bonding agents that produce friction at a different frequency range, often pushing the vibration above 20,000 Hz, which is beyond the range of human hearing. The vibration still exists, but you literally cannot hear it. That is engineering brilliance. You are not eliminating the physics. You are shifting the physics outside the range that matters. Now, ceramic pads cost more. A set of Akebono Pro Act ceramic pads might run $35 to $55 per axle, compared to $15 to $25 for budget semi-metallic pads. Ceramic pads produce dramatically less brake dust, which means cleaner wheels and less corrosion on your rotors. They wear more evenly, which means your rotors last longer. They generate less heat in normal driving, which extends the life of your brake fluid and caliper seals. When you factor in the longer rotor life and fewer repeat brake jobs, ceramics are often cheaper in the long run. And they are quiet from day one. I have been putting Akebono pads on customer vehicles for over a decade. The callback rate for noise complaints is essentially zero. With budget pads, I used to get 2 or 3 callbacks a month. Step 4. The bedding procedure. This is the step that changes everything, and almost nobody does it. In Japan, proper brake pad bedding is not optional. It is a specified factory procedure. When a new Toyota or Honda rolls off the assembly line, the brakes go through a controlled bedding process before the vehicle is released. When the factory service manual tells a technician to replace brake pads, it includes a bedding procedure in the instructions. In America, most shops install the new pads, pump the brake pedal a few times to seat the pistons, and hand you the keys. That is like buying a brand new cast iron skillet and expecting it to be non-stick without seasoning it first. Here is what bedding does and why it matters. When a new brake pad makes contact with a rotor, the two surfaces are not perfectly mated. There are microscopic high spots and low spots on both surfaces. When you brake, only the high spots make contact, which concentrates force unevenly and generates vibration. Proper bedding gradually wears down those high spots and deposits a thin, even layer of pad material onto the rotor surface called a transfer film. Once that transfer film is established, the pad is no longer rubbing directly against bare cast iron. It is rubbing against a uniform layer of its own material, which dramatically reduces vibration and noise. The Japanese bedding procedure is straightforward. After installing new pads, make 20 to 30 gentle stops from 30 miles per hour down to about 10 miles per hour. Use moderate brake pressure, not hard stops. Allow about 30 seconds between each stop for cooling. After the initial set of stops, make 5 slightly more aggressive stops from 45 to 50 miles per hour, down to about 15 miles per hour. Then drive for at least 5 to 10 minutes with minimal braking to let everything cool down completely. Do not come to a complete stop and hold the brake pedal down during the cool down phase. If you stop and hold the brake, you can imprint a hot spot of pad material onto the rotor. which will cause vibration and noise later. After this procedure, you should see a slight gray film on the rotor face. That is the transfer film, and it is exactly what you want. The best braking occurs when there is an even layer of pad material across the entire rotor surface. This minimizes squealing, increases stopping power, and maximizes the life of both pads and rotors. I started doing this bedding procedure on every brake job about 8 years ago, after a Japanese trained technician showed me the difference. My brake noise callbacks dropped by about 80% overnight. The pads last longer. The rotors stay smoother. It takes 15 extra minutes. There is no reason not to do it. Step 5. Caliper maintenance. The last piece of the puzzle is one that gets overlooked the most, and it ties the entire system together. Your brake caliper has sliding pins that allow it to float and apply even pressure to both sides of the rotor. If those pins are dry, corroded, or binding, the caliper cannot float properly, and one pad presses harder than the other. Uneven pressure means uneven wear, uneven heat distribution, and vibration. That vibration becomes squeal. Japanese factory service manuals specify that every brake job includes removing, cleaning, inspecting, and relubricating the caliper slide pins with high-temperature synthetic grease. They also specify inspecting the pin boots for cracks or tears that allow moisture in. A torn boot leads to corroded pins, which leads to a sticking caliper, which leads to noise, uneven pad wear, and eventually a much more expensive repair. In my shop, I charge $20 extra to do this on every brake job, and it is the best $20 my customers spend. A caliper that slides freely distributes force evenly, which keeps the entire system in harmony. It is the foundation that all the other steps rely on. So there it is, the 5-step Japanese method to eliminate brake squeal permanently. Multi-layer anti-squeal shims with proper grease application, J-chamfered pad edges that maintain noise suppression as the pad wears, ceramic or OEM-grade friction material matched to your vehicle, a proper bedding and procedure to establish a uniform transfer film, and caliper maintenance to ensure even pressure distribution. None of these steps alone will fix a squeal problem permanently. That is the key insight the Japanese engineers understood that most American shops still miss. It is not about finding the one magic fix. It is about building a system where every component works together to prevent vibration from forming in the first place. That layered approach, attacking the problem from 5 angles simultaneously, is why your friend's Camry with 180,000 miles still has silent brakes, while your 3-year-old car with aftermarket pads sounds like a banshee every morning. Here is the total cost if you are doing it yourself. A set of quality ceramic pads with integrated shims, $35 to $55 per axle. A small tube of high-temperature synthetic brake grease, $8 to $12. A flat file for chamfering if needed, $6. Total extra investment over a bargain bin brake job, maybe $25 to $40. For that, you get brakes that are silent, last longer, produce less dust, and stop better. That is not an expense. That is the smartest money you will spend on your car this year. Next time you are sitting at a red light and your brakes let out that high-pitched squeal and the person in the car next to you gives you that look, remember, the solution has existed for decades. The Japanese figured it out. Now you know it too. If this kind of straight talk is helping you, hit subscribe. I have got more videos coming on the maintenance secrets that factory engineers know, but dealership service departments never tell you about. Like the video, if it saved you from another squeaky brake job. And if you want to know which brake pads I actually recommend by name and which ones I would never put on my own car, I did a whole video on that. It is right here. Drive safe. Take care of your car and it will take care of you. Take it or leave it. I will see you in the next one.